Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Background on Aaron. He is the director of the Sports Law and Business program at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. He was the associate director of football at the NCAA. He also worked as a Pac-12 committee host at the Sun Bowl Association. He's been a research assistant for a Marquette law professor, legal assistant at a law firm, multiple law firms, legal consultant as well. He was a legal clerk at NASCAR. He was also a tour guide during his undergraduate at Notre Dame. So we're looking forward to this and learn from Aaron's background. Today, we're hearing from Aaron Hernandez. How's it going, Aaron?
Good, Connor. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Excited to have you on the podcast and learn from your wealth of knowledge you've got.
I appreciate it, man. It's wonderful to be here. And great job with this, by the way. This is a really neat endeavor.
Oh, thank you. We're excited and we're looking forward to grow and expand and continue to get great guests such as yourself on the podcast.
Only up from here, man.
No. And regarding kind of your Marquette journey, how'd you choose Marquette, especially when it's kind of, a sports law school, so it's kind of their big thing. So were you trying to be a sports agent, sports lawyer? How'd that come about?
Yeah, so that was a little bit more sophisticated journey. I did research going into law school. I'm a first generation attorney, but I kind of freaked out my freshman year at Notre Dame. There was a girl who was talking about how she was weighing her options, and Northwestern was one of those options, and she ended up turning down Northwestern to go to Notre Dame. And I've told a couple of people this story. I got a bunch of stuff from Northwestern in that undergraduate recruitment process, so much so that at the end of the recruiting process, I didn't apply because it was some directional school. They went to the Sun Bowl one year, right? And I was like, it's this weird school in purple. Like, why would I go to Northwestern? I'll just go to UTEP if that's the case. And why is this girl even considering this place? Yeah. And I did some research. When I got back to my dorm that night, I was like, oh my God, I could have gone to Northwestern. At the end of the recruiting process, they had literally reached out to me and they said, what more could we have done to just get you to have applied? Like, if you were eligible for all sorts of aid and you'd have been a great fit in our community, yada, yada, yada. I could have gone to Northwestern, it feels like. And I don't know. I didn't actually apply, which is stupid. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a little more sophisticated this time around. And I'm going to research how to get into law school. So I literally read a book by a woman named Susan Estrich. It's called How to Get into Law School. Okay. And I did not read at the time for fun, that's for sure. But I read that book. And I ended up befriending a sports agent by chance who wanted his daughter to go to Notre Dame. And he worked with, and I think he still does work with, Jimmy Sexton. His name's Rick Landrum. At the time, the firm was called Athletic Resource Management. And I knew I wanted to work in sports. I knew that there was this very niche area of the law called sports law. I thought I wanted to be a sports agent. And Rick was the one that said, okay, you got two options. You either go to Marquette or Tulane. I would go to Marquette right now. And he gave some reasons. I think the dean at Tulane had left or something. There was some transition there. Mm-hmm. I was like, Marquette or Tulane? Where are those places, first of all? And they're nowhere near the top of the rankings. You look at those US News rankings, like these are middle tier, lower tier schools if you buy those things. So I took Rick's advice with a grain of salt, applied to both places, looked into a bunch of places nationally, applied all over the place, started getting into a bunch of those more highly ranked schools. And I kept on going back to Rick. The higher ranked schools I'd get into, I'd say, Rick, got to go to Wake Forest, right? No, Marquette or Tulane, and I'd go to Marquette. I'd got to go to IU or Illinois, right? Nope, Marquette or Tulane, and I'd go to Marquette. Finally, Duke entered the picture. I was like, gotta go to Duke, right? Like it's Duke, right? And he's like, yeah, what do you want to be? Are you sure you want to do sports? Absolutely. I don't want to be a real attorney. Okay, well, then you got to go to Marquette or Tulane, and I would go to Marquette. And so I listened to Rick And because I mean, he was so consistent about it, and boy, that was one of the best decisions of my young career. It had a huge impact on my trajectory, I think, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be here today without that fork in the road.
Awesome. Well, that's once again another great story there. We appreciate it. And then why a career in sports? What drew your attention to the actual sports industry?
Yeah, man, why not? You know, I it's so much fun. Like I constantly found myself when I was an undergrad thinking about my future. You know, I was going to have this finance degree, so I was going to go be an investment banker. And Notre Dame had a great track record of pumping those people out. Thought about working at a big accounting firm. You know, thought about my double major was political science. I was really into to politics at the time. Going to go work for campaigns, go work on Capitol Hill, and all of it just sounded like work. But you know what I would always do in my free time is I would read up on my favorite teams. I would read about Notre Dame football and how they were doing. I'd read up about the Cowboys. I'd read up on the Spurs. You know, and I found it one. You know, a lot of us are here, especially your listeners listening to this podcast, find sports entertaining, but also just the operation of it was so cool to me. So I was in band at Notre Dame, and at the time there was no video board in the stadium, and there was no piped in music, which for the early 2010s, like that's like, come on, like get with the times, right? Like put a video board up. But Notre Dame people, they love old things, and they really liked not having a video board and not having piped in music. And so the band ended up becoming a really big focal point for the football program.
Right.
My senior year, I had a leadership position where essentially I would call the songs in the stadium. That was the only music you were getting in this 80,000 seat stadium that was sold out every week. And so the football staff was constantly interested in what would be played on third down, you know, what was good timeout music, what's like new sheet music that we could add to play that, you know, the recruits would like. And so there was a lot of interest around us when I was there. And it was really cool just seeing the operation of everything. We were involved in like these big pep rally planning meetings, the game timing sheets, and it was just all really neat to me. I thought, man, just as like a very, very high level thought, if I made this my career, I mean, I would love going to work every day, I think. Okay. Right. And so I think that's where it started for me.
Okay. That's kind of where you got the love for the sports industry and kind of, you know, fell in love with it.
Through band. Who would have known, right?
Yeah, who would have known? But, you know, once again, you figured it out and you found your way to the top. So what are you going to do?
That's right.
And then kind of so you talked about your love for the sports industry. How did you break into the sports industry? Was it through the connections, the schools, applying to a bunch of jobs? Kind of how was your first break? You know, how'd you get your foot in the door the first time?
My first big break was, well, first I decided to go to a school that focused on sports.
Right.
So Marquette at the time, their law school was ranked 100 something in the rankings. Not great, right? Objectively not great. However, it's not reflected in those rankings. It was one of two places where people literally flocked to focus on the thing that I wanted to do. And so that was the first great decision that helped me out break into the industry. My first big break was the summer after my 1L year. I got selected to be the legal clerk at NASCAR. I owe a lot to, there was not a lot of connection there. It was, again, just a lot of luck. My boss at the time, she's now the chief legal officer for the U.S. Soccer Federation. She was general counsel for NASCAR. Her name's Karen Lietzau. And Karen, you know, she took a chance on me, hired me over the phone. Literally, it was a phone interview. And I had one of the most fun summers of my life in Daytona Beach, made a bunch of connections. And what I noticed after that is everything I would apply to, I would get at least a phone call back because people were saying, "Oh, wow, he worked at NASCAR."
Right.
My next big break was I went to a career panel at Marquette. There was a guy who was there. His name was Bill Nesnadal. And Bill's my career guardian angel. He was working at the NCAA in enforcement. And I went up to go introduce myself to Bill. And for whatever reason, Bill absolutely loved me. I feel very fortunate to this day that Bill just felt that way. He was keeping in touch with me after we left there. And that was my plug into the NCAA internship, which I took right after I graduated from law school. And I didn't really appreciate at the time how tough it was and how highly sought after that position was, particularly in the enforcement staff. And really, again, I'm kind of like Mr. Magoo. I feel like throughout my career, just like have these like good things happen, and I'm a little oblivious. But Bill was a huge advocate and plug for me to get that spot with the NCAA, which I then leveraged that into working full time, going on to being the eventual associate director of football, and now I'm here. So my two big breaks, to answer your question, was that NASCAR job that Karen took a chance on me with, and then meeting Bill. Bill was he was the plug early on. So those are my big breaks.
Got it. And I think a lot of it, a lot of us that have been, working in this industry or getting into industry, it's a lot of the connections, the first people that you meet and, you make friends with, which is why, I think graduate schools and law schools, specifically like in the sports industry, you're trying to work in sports, obviously, is that much more beneficial because you're already meeting those like-minded people and you have a lot of similarities and things in common. So, and it's a small world. The sports world's a small world.
Yeah,
really,
and
I think.
Bill, he's 2 years older than me, or 3 years older than me. Anyways, we would have either just missed each other in law school or have overlapped by just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was huge for me, and I think he was really motivated, especially at the time, being so young in his career, to help out someone who was, I don't know, maybe he saw a little bit of himself when helping this person out,
right?
And so, I know that a lot of people focus on vertical networking, networking with team presidents and general counsel. You're interested in like law, general counsels, and people who've like kind of made it. But boy, probably one of my most valuable, if not probably my most valuable connection, the one that led to me getting my shot in sports ultimately, was somebody who's just a little bit older than me. And so that's more horizontal networking. You just never know which one of your classmates is going to be the first one who makes it big, and then they remember you. This happens all the time when guys get hired as coaches in college football. They were GAs with somebody about 10 years ago, how that person treated them, what their working relationship was like, how they dealt with adversity in a similar situation in life. That it leads to a lot of decisions for these guys and gals. Am I going to take this person along with me? Am I going to give them the wink and the nod? And I was very fortunate to have that experience with Bill. So I don't know, it's just something to remember. You just never know, particularly the people you're around all the time, who's going to make it first. And you might want to keep them in your good graces because it might benefit you as well.
Yep. You never know. So that's big lesson to keep in mind there. So then, staying within the sports industry, obviously with all your work experience, what skills stand out? I know there's a bunch. Could you narrow down maybe two, three skills that students or future students are going to need in the sports industry?
Yeah. So I think communication is humongous, and that's a little bit of a cliche answer, but you'd be surprised, even as overused of an answer that is for a question like this, how many people are really bad at communicating. Mm-hmm. And it comes in a variety of different forms. Maybe they come across as someone who they're actually not, and people don't like them as a result. Maybe they are really smart. This happens a lot with really smart people. They're really smart. They read a lot. They're well informed. They might be the most informed person on whatever the subject matter is. But if you can't distill information into a digestible form that people can again digest and understand, you know, you're a very smart person on an island that can't get your ideas to stick. So communication is really, really important. You know, I think depending on your position, leadership is extremely important. No matter where you're at in the industry, your networking skills, your political savvy is going to be really, really important, because it's an industry about who you know, not so much what you know. Sports isn't hard, right? We're not curing cancer unless you're a team doctor or, you know, really a team doctor. It's not even that hard for the lawyers. You know, and there's a finite number of positions. I guarantee you 90%, that's probably a conservative estimate, of those positions are going to people who have been vetted previous to a cold application process, and where people have warm connections into whatever the organization is. And, you know, the more politically savvy you can be, the better you are at managing your relationships and working your connections and staying in touch with people and showing people you care, honestly. You know, but I think people can sniff out a professional networker versus someone who actually has interest in you and your career and what you're doing. You know, the more you can stay on top of that, and it takes work, I think the more successful that you'll be in this industry.
Got it. I appreciate that. And I think, you know, I've asked that question a few times to people, and the communication always seems to come up. But I do think it's always talked about, but then people don't really put it in practice, or they, you know, take it for granted. They just say like, oh, I could talk to people, so I'm good. But I think a lot of it actually does take practice, and especially when you're doing, you know, like interviews or like job interviews, like practicing your job, you know, what you're going to say in the interview and all that stuff. So I think that just comes with practice and with being in those types of situations.
Yeah, I agree.
So thanks for the background here, and we'll kind of jump into the SLB program, so we can give the listeners a little bit of inside information here, and kind of what to expect. So how many years has the Sports Law and Business program been around there at ASU?
So it started in 2015. I don't know what the exact number was, but that was a very, very small graduating class that academic year, something like 4 to 5 people, right? That's when it first started up. In fact, at that time, it wasn't even called a Master of Sports Law and Business. It was coded as an emphasis within like another degree. So that was like the pre stages of
right.
where we're at today. So it started in 2015, and we have grown like a weed. And weed's not a good analogy, I guess, because weeds are bad, but like we've grown very, very well. You probably unrecognizable now to the folks who were a part of it back at the ground level, you know.
Got it. Awesome. And then how long does it take to complete the program once, you know, administered, you know?
So it depends. It's 36, just the MSLB by itself is 36 credit hours. You could do it in a year, which means you take 15 credit hours your fall semester, 15 your spring semester. You walk with your friends in May, and then there's 6 credits left over. That's for an internship. It's an experiential learning piece. Once you finish up those 6 credits over the summer, you have your diploma mailed to you at the end of that internship. And then people also break it out into 2 years, which 36 divided by 4 semesters is 9 credit hours per semester. The 1 year advantage is you're done, right? And you're on the job market right away. You got school over with. The disadvantage that I hear from a lot of people that do it in a year is, boy, that was quick. We're really big on our culture and our folks having a really good experience. And it's really not a year. It's about 8 months if you do it in a one academic year time frame. The 2-year program, the corollary, the pro is that they get to take their time, spend a little more time with their classmates, get to enjoy the program a little bit more. The con is, well, you're in school for 2 years
Right.
versus 1 year. So we have a mix of people who do both. We probably have a little bit of a majority of each cohort that does it in 1 year as opposed to the 2-year plan, but that's how it breaks out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next, kind of what the breakdown is, but sounds like most of the students do the 1 year. And for the viewers, I did the 1 year, and I will say the 8 months does go by quick. The few of us that graduated in the 1 year, it's a fast process there, but all for the best.
Yeah, and selfishly, I wish Connor would have done it over like 5 years if we had that track.
The 5-year plan.
For me, there's a lot of people. We're in December now, so that there's a lot of folks who are doing it in 1 year. Like half my time is over with them already, right. and that's a big bummer for me. You live here. So that's awesome. I get to take advantage of that. But I mean, there's a lot of people who I won't see for, who knows how many years afterwards. And I really, get to know all of our students really well. And that's the toughest part of the job is seeing them. And it's the most rewarding too. But, for selfish reasons, like I want to have these people around as long as possible. But anyways, that's a tangent for another day.
Oh, good. So I saw recently the program published that you have 80% of the 2021 graduates have jobs or internships within 6 months of graduation. So that's very commendable. How was the program able to accomplish that feat, and what went into that?
Yeah, and 80% is a very conservative estimate. What's not included in that number, which we could probably dress up a little bit, but we try to keep it as transparent as possible. So there's a number of people who go on to continue their education. They get really excited about law school while here, right. And they decide, what, I do want to be a lawyer after doing this master's program. By the way, for your viewers, if you do want to be a lawyer and you do want to do this program, you can do the both at the same time and cut out some cost. But there are a number of people who decide, I want to go do the JD program. There's been a number of people who say, I want to go be a PhD, or this program helped me figure out that I want to get actually another master's and whatever it is. So the 80% number is already high. We could probably make it look even higher with some dressing up, but I'll give that caveat. How we get there is we just constantly put our students in a position to be in front of industry professionals, from the classroom, where 90% of our faculty are all people who've actually worked in sports. They actually do the thing. They don't just go to school and write about it. Yeah. They actually worked in sports. I was never a professor. I was never like any sort of academic. I didn't write things. I worked at the NCAA. I was an investigator. I'm a football guy. Steph, she's on our faculty. She worked at the Fiesta Bowl and in college sports. Rob, he works in sponsorships. If you go down our list, our roster, people actually do this stuff.
Yeah.
Most of them are currently doing it too. So our students are constantly exposed, whether they like it or not. Within those classes, there's always opportunities. So it's forced networking, where we bring in these speakers so our students have exposure to them. So they're forced to constantly interact with more and more industry professionals. We have an advisory board that has been very helpful to our program. We have a retreat for all these people who are C-suite level executives across the sports industry that have a vested interest in our students. We're starting now. We're getting to the age, even though we're still really young, we're getting to the age where a lot of our alums are catching on in the industry. We're putting our students around them. constantly. We constantly try to put our students in positions that will maximize opportunities for them. That's one part. The other part is, it's way easier to win football games with 5-star recruits versus 2 stars.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time. I mean, I shot, I don't know how many hours today and how many hours yesterday on admissions and recruiting. We are very, very particular about who we admit into the program, who fits into the culture. Every single person who gets in has to have some piece of sports experience before they get here. We interview people. We ask for elevator pitches from them. I mean, we really, really take a lot of time. Our admissions operation is like a football scouting operation. We really, really take time before we put our offers out. And I think that's important. It's crucially important, because the more and more we can recruit really talented classes with folks like yourself to come in here and succeed and have a good time. And it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of stress taken off of us putting these people in front of industry professionals, right? Like we're chock full of 5 stars. So I don't worry about like how our students are going to perform in these high pressure situations. And so that's the thought. We obviously do like a lot of hustling on an individual level in any way that I can help out with people who want to work in football, or hopefully I know somebody. I don't mind being a plug as far as I can possibly help. And then we got a lot of faculty and staff and alums and board members and speakers who they also want to help too. They feel some type of affinity towards the program, but it all starts and ends with the quality of our roster, and we got a really freaking high quality roster.
Awesome. Yep, I can attest to that. Piggybacking kind of off that question, what are some teams and agencies and organizations that some of these graduates have gone on to go work for?
Oh boy. There's this slide when our recruiting team does a presentation on the program. When I give a report to different boards, I give a faculty report yesterday, how we're doing admissions wise, how our alums are doing in the industry. There's this really cool slide that they came up with that has this smattering of logos. I'm sure you remember this from when you were in the program. And I'm always amazed every time that slide comes up. And I've seen it a million times, right? Like it's not like it's like the first time
yeah.
But it's always really crazy to me that we have that diverse of a roster of people in sports at the age that we're at. Remember, we started in 2015 and there was just like 4 people who graduated at that time. But we have people all over the NFL, including in NFL offices. We have people all over Major League Baseball, including at MLB. We have people all over like college sports and the NBA. Like I feel like half the Suns organization is SLB alum. Same with like Sun Devil Athletics has been such a huge supporter of us, but also just other the NCAA. And then like when you start getting out of the major sports, you have action sports, you have different agencies, Excel Management, Priority Sports, Adidas, Reebok, different shoe companies, different marketing agencies, arenas, different data analysts, hockey teams. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Again, the widespread nature of what our alums have done. A common question I get is, what can I do with this degree? I say anything except for being the team doctor or the team lawyer. Those 2 things, you got to get a professional degree before. You either got to get the MD or whatever equivalent there is of it, or a JD. Otherwise, our alums have done everything. And I'm just talking about the diversity of organizations. I'm not even talking about the diversity of the positions that they've occupied, from business ops to the actual sports ops to agency to legal to it's pretty incredible, all the different things that they do when we've only been around for for less than a decade, right?
Mhm.
What would this be, like 8 years now at this point that we're coming up on? It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, I do remember that slide coming across the screen once, and it's pretty inspiring getting in there. And you're seeing all the logos, and the opportunities are endless. You can go in any avenue you'd like. You can. And the thing I like about the sports industry is it kind of overlaps. So you can work in one area, whether it's a business side for the Suns or something, and then you can transfer that over to the MLS or whatever field you're looking into. So that's why I think it's so cool. These skills and networking, it's all transferable. You can
The
go
other thing,
anywhere.
Connor, in that 80% number that we could probably dress up,
Hmm.
and it's not reflected in that slide of all the sports organizations, we focus on getting students jobs in sports. That's our mantra, by the way.
Hmm.
Every decision that I make, whether it's recruiting, admissions, hiring, resource allocation, um, hell, even deciding to do this podcast is all about getting our students jobs in sports. That's our main goal.
Hmm.
However, there's a number of people, it's not a lot, but there's a number of people who decide they don't want to work in
Right.
sports anymore, or they want to work tangentially in sports. And they're having very successful, very fulfilling careers, and they're great alums of ours. We have people in the financial services industry, marketing agencies, people who've gone to go work at big law firms. So really, like our alums are pretty impressive. I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, yeah, as the program should be, and it's been awesome to see and kind of connect with them now that I'm an alum and a lot of my friends are alums, so it's been good to see and good to connect.
No,
We talked about it a little bit about it earlier about the professors, but you mentioned some of the real world experience they have. Could you go a little bit in depth in that, or kind of what fields they have and the different classes they teach? Not all of them, of course, because there's a bunch, but maybe four or five.
yeah, I mean, look at our faculty roster. It's pretty cool. We have the former president of ESPN Global Sales who teaches with us. That's incredible, Ed Earhart, and he's so happy to help us out. We have the former director of inclusion at the NCAA, Sonia Robinson, who teaches for us. I mean, that's pretty neat. The athletic director here at the university, Ray Anderson,
Yep.
teaches for us. Like, how many ADs take the time out of their schedule to actually teach material too, by the way,
Uh-huh.
not just come in and just glad hand a little bit and say, oh, this is
Yeah.
this is my path, which is very important too. But like, Ray actually teaches about negotiations, and I mean, he's
Yep.
he's been in some pretty
Yeah.
cool situations that I think is what would be awesome for a student to hear from somebody who's done that versus somebody
Definitely.
who's just professing it.
Right.
We
Right.
have the GC of the Diamondbacks. Like, this guy works all day, general counseling a Major League Baseball team, and then he comes here at 6 p.m. on whatever day it is that Caleb comes in, and
Yeah.
and he spends time teaching our students. By the way, we also have the GC of the Suns, who does a similar thing. Rob Yao runs his own sponsorship agency, and I feel like Rob's like Kevin Bacon. He knows
Yeah.
everybody in the world, and Joe Garagiola Jr. is he's not full time with us, but he teaches a variety of classes. He's the only general manager in the Valley from the four major sports who has a championship ring. He was the GM of the Diamondbacks when they won the World Series back in 2001. That's pretty cool. And he's decided in his later years to spend his time with us. It's pretty cool, man. Like, it's pretty neat to see all these people who want to be involved with us when they have plenty of other options. There's plenty of other
Mhm.
things these very successful people could be doing, and they want to spend time with our students. But you know what? I don't blame them, because if I were in their situation, I'd do the same thing. In fact, I've made it my full-time job, so it makes a lot of sense.
Uh-huh. No, yeah, I agree with that. And one of the cool things about being in the program is seeing all those, I guess stars and big time people coming in, and like you were saying, Ray Anderson, he came to our class a bunch of times. It wasn't just like a 1-2 off thing. It was weekly coming in, giving us war stories, and that's kind of the coolest part is all the speakers coming in and teaching, and they're giving us these real life battlefield stories of them out in the trenches doing their thing. So I thought that's definitely a bright spot in the program
Yeah, and
going
then you
forward. And
multiply
so
it, man. You multiply it. You look at our faculty, and that's a deep roster. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
Like those are just the people who teach full time. Within each one
Right.
of those classes, there's all sorts of people that come through here. One project that one of our grad assistants did this last year was like a yearbook for the class. It was really well
Mhm.
done. It was a year-end newsletter, really fun to read, see everything that happened that recapped. It was actually your academic year. And there was a page that Zach made that talked about every single person and what their affiliation was in sports who came through the program that he could find. Right. There was definitely people missing from this list. It was not totally exhaustive. And it's mind blowing. I think there was
Yeah.
4 columns of names on this page in this newsletter of people who came in for, again, a ground program of a cohort of around like 80 people. Like that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
there's no way you're not getting some exposure to some really successful person in sports who has something to do with something you may be interested in.
Yeah.
I just don't know who else offers that.
Yeah. No, it's huge. It's definitely one of the big bright spots. And then kind of this is a kind of crowd favorite question. What's as you talk to other students, what's the consensus favorite class or class that everyone should take?
Yeah, well, but besides mine, is
Yeah.
what you said.
Besides careers and yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the one that was really, really successful, and we haven't been able to offer it recently because Sonia is so busy, is Sonia Robinson, who I'd mentioned earlier. She was the former director of inclusion at the NCAA. She taught a standalone DEI course.
Hmm.
And I was really proud of that and starting that up when I first got here. That was my first year, my first full year as
Right.
director here. It was on the heels of like all the George Floyd stuff, and we weren't just doing this as like some like do-gooder thing, right? Uh, at the time when there was that big racial moment in America, my phone was actually blowing up. One, because nobody else had anything to do, right? But a lot of my friends who are ADs or were some type of supervisory position in sports had a lot, or at least some, Black employees who reported up to them, and they had no idea what to do at the time.
Mm.
I and asking me like, I don't know, like I didn't take a class on like how to handle this, and they said, I feel unfairly, woefully underprepared for this moment.
Mm.
Now, to be fair, DEI and coursework and seminars and professional development has existed for a while now, and people just haven't seen like quite the emergency need that they probably saw in the middle of 2020. But the point that I took away was, man, we're training future leaders in sports. They need to know the importance of this. Not because I agree, like it's right. I'm a minority myself, but there's like business implications for this
Hmm.
stuff. There's like crisis management tactics that you could take that people just don't know, and Sonia specializes in that stuff. She runs
Right.
consulting here in Arizona now, doing that type of thing, and she talks all the time about how she's having to help them put out a fire
Mm.
rather than prevent fires.
Right.
And I thought that was just a huge value add for our class. And she's great, by the way. Sonia is fantastic. If you ever get a chance to talk to her, I encourage anybody to do it. It's a shame that she's not still at the NCAA helping out their inclusion efforts there. But the class went so well that reviewing the evaluations at the end of the year, she got a perfect score.
Okay.
She got a perfect score in her evaluations. And then I got a memo from the students at the end of the course saying this needs to be a required course. So of all my time here, which has been a long time, I thought that was pretty cool. Like, which one of you are going to spend the time to write a memo to me about a course and why it needs to be required. So she clearly made an impression. It was clearly
Uh-huh.
extremely valuable for them. I'm so glad that we got that done that year, and I have hopes to bring that back at some point because it was just so successful. And I agree with them. It should be a required course.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how, I guess she was mentioning she was putting out fires instead of preventing them. And I think that course is obviously very beneficial in that, especially with the age we live in. And we've seen in the news recently a bunch of, preventable, I guess, instances pop up that, we should all at least be able to combat, and prevent the fire instead of like, oh, well, what do we do now type of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, excuse me, before this is kind of goes into the accepted part for the students, before attending ASU, how should students prepare? Or I guess just in grad school in general, how should they prepare? There's certain things they should do, certificates, courses, books, anything like that.
You're talking about before the program.
Mm-hmm.
For us specifically, I'll tell you what we look for. We look for academic success. The way we measure that is somebody's grade point average. It's about and it's a pretty blunt tool for pretty sophisticated surgery, but it's what we got. We look to see, well, what is their commitment to the sports industry, and do they have some idea of what they want to do in their career? So that's usually reflected in their personal statement and their pitch. We get to ask even more questions about that. If all that's good, when we get to an interview, and we get to post them up on, why here versus other options they have. And then the thing that we are so stubborn about, Connor, this is, if you don't have any sports experience before coming here, this is not the place for you. There are a number of significant barriers, as as your former classmates know, as anybody who works in sports know, to working in sports. There's also some harsh realities, to do something that's really cool. Remember, I talked about I decided to do something that's really cool. You take a discount for that, right? There's a reason that corporate lawyers and big law firms make the amount of money they do. I would venture to say they're not as happy doing their job or motivated doing their job as I am doing mine. Mine's a lot of fun. It's been fun, for the last 10 years, right? And people who don't have at least some exposure to those core tenets of working in the industry, you're going to take a discount. It's not as glitzy and glamorous as you might think. There's some significant barriers to entry, depending on which part of the industry you enter. Let's say it's like coaching, or you want to work with a football staff. There could be low job security, plus you're taking a discount. We don't have time to coach people up from that level, because we're on limited time, especially if you're here for only a year. We don't have time to address that stuff. And we need people to continue getting jobs in sports. There's a reason. So we want our students to be happy and satisfied with the degree. That's the main reason we want them getting jobs in sports. But also selfishly, from a program perspective, we just want to keep on packing these organizations with our people. So when students in the future are trying to get into wherever, you're going to be the president of, it's easy to be like, Connor, hey, we need you to to honor the pitchfork and help a fellow alum out. So I think that those are some of the biggest priorities that we have, and then why it's so important to us.
Got it. Awesome. And then kind of lastly, just closing up with the program, how do students apply? How do they get more information? Things like that.
Yeah. So applications on our website, go to law.asu.edu. You can navigate to our program. It's pretty easy to do. It's pretty user-friendly. What's even more user-friendly is following our social channels on Instagram and Twitter. Particularly, we're pretty active. The handle is Selig, SELIGSLB, at Selig SLB for both channels. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram we use a ton, and we always have a pinned tweet on there that links to our application. Applications are open all the way up until sometime in the summer. we accept them on a rolling basis, which means as soon as we get your application, we start evaluating it. So as soon as we start evaluating it, we start making offers. There's a limited number of spots. It gets really, really competitive to get in, particularly as you go on in the process. So if you apply right now, and we're evaluating a bunch of all-stars, like literally right now, your chances are way greater than as time goes on, where those spots are going away versus applying in like May, when maybe we have 5 slots left and 30 applications, where people have a stellar GPA. They were a student athlete in college. They gave this great personal statement, and then we have 30 great people. We have to make decisions, right? We don't have the capacity to fit everybody in. So the earlier you apply, the better your chances are.
Perfect. So you heard it here first. Get those applications in and get it rolling. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Well, Aaron, thanks for spending time with us today. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy man out there in Phoenix. We appreciate everything you're doing for us and for the ASU program, and we're looking forward to watching the success, not only your success but the program's success. And going forward, if anyone's looking to reach out, you can hit us up at Constant Sports Podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts. And then if you're lucky enough, we can forward you over to Aaron, and he might be able to connect with you.
Absolutely. Connor, thanks for having me.
Hey, you know what they say, it's all about who you know. And now, you know Aaron Hernandez. Hey, you know what they say, it's all about who you know. And now, you know Aaron Hernandez.